How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the BLTD Extracast number 8. I believe it's number 8. We're going to go with the number 8 at this point. I'm Ryan Wolf, at WolfBLTD on Twitter. Joining me on this Extracast, he is the co-leader, co-captain. I guess we could do like the co-captain, like the Sabres did a couple of years ago. I'm the home captain. You're the road captain. He is Brayton Wilson at BJ Wilson WGR on Twitter.
Yeah, and I'd be absolutely fine with being a co-captain with you. It should be fun.
I was just trying to make it kind of get the mood, with we're talking hockey today, so a little bit of a spoiler alert. But I figured, well, I know that's why you're so excited. But I was gonna say we have to kind of have it. I can't just say the co-conspirator. I could just have to say co-captain. I'll be the Thomas Vanek to your Steve Ott or whatever, or vice versa.
Okay, sounds good. I'm not much of a tough guy, so I'd probably be the Vanek and you could be the Ott.
I'm gritty. I'll get that heart and that grit, and
you got it.
That blue collar. I'll carry my lunch pail all the time too. I got a lunch pail.
All right.
I fit the role perfectly. Now we're here today to discuss this 2003 NHL redraft that we've been working on for the past couple weeks, but now it's done. And now we're going to discuss it. Now, the cool thing about this is right now, if you're looking at this on BLTDsports.com, at the top of the page, you have the YouTube video. And if you scroll down as you listen, you will see the complete 1 through 30 picks, Brayton's picks, my picks, and then the original pick. And it's been a lot of fun. And this is something we're going to do a little bit more of. And as time goes on, we'll probably branch out to football and maybe baseball. I know baseball is a little weird because they draft. So, I mean, they kind of do the same with hockey where they draft earlier, but baseball, you're drafting like 16-year-old kids. I mean, again, hockey and baseball, it's all different. The scope, I guess, of their development, because hockey players at 16 develop a lot faster than baseball players at 16, just based off of what I see.
And honestly, going with this with the redrafts, it's really difficult. I mean, I'm going past 2003 at this point. I mean, I've already got a few already done. And it's kind of difficult looking back. And then, you got your obvious ones where it's like, okay, I'm at 1 through 25. Those are obvious. But then like the final 5, it's like, oh God, who do I put here? Who do I put here over some other players? Who's had a better career? Who's had more stats? Who's done this? Who's done that? It's tough. It's really, really tough.
That's how this draft was. I mean, it started off very easily. The first handful of picks fell right off the board. But it's something where you really have to think. You have to use the hockey IQ. You really have to give it a good thought, and
got to channel your inner Sam Reinhart.
Exactly. The way we did this is really, it's not. Originally, it was going to be, okay, Pittsburgh picked a goalie, so pick a goalie, and then we got to the point where it was like, just pick the best player available and the best player you think that they would be better with today. I mean, It's a lot of fun. We'll just put it that way. You'll notice as we go on, there'll be some guys we can have a conversation about. Excuse me. Other guys, we can just say, "Yep, this is who I thought." Cool. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna start right at the top as we should. I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2003 selected first overall. They originally selected goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury, which has worked out pretty well for them. Now, in this redraft, both Brayton and I have selected Corey Perry of the Anaheim Ducks, right winger. And I think I have a hunch as to why we both selected Corey Perry. 307 goals in 755 career games, 623 points. He is right now, as of recording time on December 23rd, 2015, he ranks 4th in total points scored among 2003 NHL entry draft players. So I selected him because of goals, because of his penchant for scoring goals. What had you picking him?
I picked him there because I think he's the most complete all-around player that was selected in this draft and that has developed into the player that he is right now. He could score goals. He makes electrifying plays. He's physical. He plays the puck very well, and he's very smart on the ice. And I think that he's just the best player to develop so far from the 2003 draft.
Now, moving on to the second pick very quickly, Carolina Hurricanes originally selected Eric Stahl. I went with Eric Stahl again. I mean, hard not to. Career games, he has 761 points, 317 goals, 444 assists. It's just hard. It's hard to argue for me there. But you selected Zach Parise. I'm very intrigued as to why you had have Parise going so high.
Because I think that Zach Parise is the next best offensive player that is available in this draft. I think that he is, he's just so Americana. I mean, not saying that I selected him there just because he's an American-born player, but I mean, he just plays such a great offensive game. He skates very well. He's got a great shot, and he's a leader. And I think that he's very much worthy of that second pick.
Now, looking at the third pick, this is where it starts to get fun. The Florida Panthers selected Nathan Horton, right winger. But you and I, Brayton, we both went in way different directions on this one. Mm-hmm. I selected Patrice Bergeron because I'll just throw the picks out there and then we'll go back and explain. I selected Patrice Bergeron, who originally went 45th overall to the Bruins. You selected Shea Weber, mm-hmm. who originally went 49th overall to the Predators. Now, looking at the current Florida Panthers with hindsight being 2020, if they had a Patrice Bergeron, they would be absolutely stacked offensively. I mean, the team is playing well lately, as of recording time, as mentioned. But I think Patrice Bergeron would have been if he had stayed in Florida. I mean, that's a different conversation for a different time. But that's kind of entering another realm of if they drafted him, would he have stayed in Florida? That's might be a little deep for us at this point. But I think if Florida could have redone this draft pick, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of good players that they could have picked, but I feel like Patrice Bergeron certainly is the best player available for them at this point. And I mean, 582 points in 773 games, hard to argue.
Yeah, and I went with Shea Weber because I think he's a franchise defenseman. I mean, we've seen it with him being the captain of Nashville and him playing as well as he has in his career in Nashville. He's amassed a big amount of games in total, 719, 156 goals, 261 assists. I just think that he is the best defenseman, and I think that he was probably, and I feel he was the next best player to come off the board, and really in this redraft. And again, it's so difficult to come up with these picks, but I think that the next, and I mean, I'm basing most of these picks off of, their impact on their team and, the impact that they have in the league. And, I just think that Shea Weber was the next best player.
Now, the fourth pick of the draft, we both have the Columbus Blue Jackets selected Nikolai Zherdev. We both selected Ryan Getzlaf. Hard to argue. 698 points. Stanley Cup champion, captain of the Anaheim Ducks. I'm sure if the Columbus Blue Jackets could have known better, they would have loved to have had their hands on Getzlaf, with hindsight being 2020. But for you and I, like I said, a no-brainer. Getzlaf to the Blue Jackets. I think we can move on from that one.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say one more thing. Getzlaf is struggling this year, but that doesn't make up for the years that he's had recently. I mean, absolutely. He's been one of the best players in the NHL for sure. And this year, the Ducks have just been a big pile of stinky poo all year.
A big pile of stinky disappointment. That's what they've been.
Yes. Yeah.
Moving on to the Buffalo Sabres. They had originally selected Thomas Vanek, right winger. I selected Shea Weber. Brayton selected Ryan Suter. So we both kind of have the right idea here. I'm assuming you went Suter because Weber was off the board, where I went Weber because he was the best defenseman on the board. And judging by what the Sabres currently have issues with, a Shea Weber or a Ryan Suter in Buffalo at this point in time would be quite the problem solver.
Yeah, and Shea Weber, excuse me. Ryan Suter has played the 5th most games of any player in the NHL since the draft. And he's piled up a ton of assists. He moves the puck very well. And he's another one of those guys who can be a leader on your team. And I think that's why I put Ryan Suter at number 5.
Now moving on to number 6. The San Jose Sharks originally selected Milan Michalek. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Michalek. I don't know. I need to hire a full-time translator.
Milan Michalek.
Speech coach. I need a speech coach. I selected Ryan Suter. mostly just because he's the best player available at this point. I think for San Jose, they probably could have used him. He would have been fantastic. We've already discussed him a lot. A great player overall. You selected Patrice Bergeron, which I'm assuming same goes, because you instead of picking Mahalik, you pick Bergeron. You get a fantastic goal scorer. As mentioned a few minutes ago, 582 points in 773 games.
Mm-hmm.
Just a fantastic hockey player overall.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the Nashville Predators, they originally selected Ryan Suter, defenseman, who we've just talked a ton about. I picked Thomas Vanek for the Predators, natural goal scorer. He has, let's see here, 309 goals, 323 assists, 632 points in 776 games. So he can put the puck in the back of the net when he's not being lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And you selected Marc-Andre Fleury for the Predators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that he was the best goalie available. Obviously, he went number 1 overall to Pittsburgh in the original selections, of course. But, just based on the play that he's had and based on the way he's been playing in net for Pittsburgh over the course of his career. I mean, he's won a Stanley Cup. He's piled up some really good statistics. I think that with that, it's rightfully deserving so that he's placed where he is.
Moving on now to the Atlanta Thrashers. Formerly Atlanta Thrashers, currently Winnipeg Jets, for those who may have forgotten. They selected Braden Coburn, the defenseman. I selected Zach Parise, just like we said before, one of the best talents in this draft, natural-born leader, all that stuff. Go on for days talking about Parise. You selected Joe Pavelski.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening.
Yeah, one of those very, very late selected guys. He was a 7th round pick,
200,
I believe. Yeah. How they missed on him is just completely beyond me, because he's developed into probably one of the best centers in the game. And not only that, but he's also the captain of the San Jose Sharks right now. 246 goals in 677 career games, 521 points. He's piled up. He's a very good offensive threat and just one of those electrifying guys that, a lot of teams swung and missed at. And he fell to the 7th round of San Jose, and boy, what a pickup for them.
In 2013, 2014, Pavelski scored 41 goals. This year, in 34 games, he has 18 goals. Looks like that number's gonna that career high in goals may fall this season. He has 521 points in 677 games, including 36 points in 34 games, and even split of 18 apiece. So, damn good hockey player for sure. And he had 3 points against the Kings in the Sharks' last game. So, showing off a little for us. The Calgary Flames, 9 overall, selected Dion Phaneuf. I picked Marc-Andre Fleury just because if the Flames had Fleury right now, they would probably be a very different franchise. And you selected Brent Burns, I'm assuming, because they need defense, and he's the next best guy on the board.
Yeah, and Brent Burns has put up a really good career as well in his time with Minnesota and also in his time with San Jose. And I think that, oh boy, what's my computer doing here? Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what's going on. But anyways, with Brent Burns, I think that he can play defense. He can play forward. He's done both in his career. He's a great puck-moving player. He's sort of a quarterback on the power play. There's my computer again. Brent Burns, he was, let's see. Okay. Yeah, 379 points, 749 games. He's one of those guys that you could just rely on to be solid on both ends of the ice. He's very smart, and I think he's just again one of the better defensemen available in this draft. I had him ranked as my 3rd best defenseman.
Now moving on to the Montreal Canadiens, they selected Andre Kostitsyn. Brayton, you selected Brent Seabrook, defenseman. I selected Jeff Carter. You go first. What had you picking Seabrook at 10 for the Canadiens?
Well, Brent Seabrook is probably, again, one of those really good two-way defensemen. He's come up big time in the clutch for Chicago, especially in the playoffs, quite a few times. And besides that, he's so heavily relied on in Chicago. I mean, he just, he's one of those better. I feel like I'm stumbling here. I don't know why, but with Brent Seabrook, I mean, he's played in nearly 800 games, 339 points. He plays really well alongside Duncan Keith. And I think even if Brent Seabrook were to play with somebody else, he'd probably play just as well as he would with Duncan Keith. But I definitely think that Brent Seabrook is, again, up there with some of the best ranked defensemen that were selected in this draft.
I selected Jeff Carter. I just feel like if the Canadiens had some extra offensive power, I mean, Carter is no slouch in 751 career games, 550 points. He's 6 goals away from 300 on his career. He's just been, I mean, aside from when he kind of fell off in Philly and then went to Columbus for some time, he's been a very solid player. And he went to LA and he's won a couple Stanley Cups. And I feel like, maybe if Montreal had him, they might have a few Stanley Cups. That's just simple explanation there. Speaking of Jeff Carter, moving on to number 11, 11th pick overall, Jeff Carter was a selection. Brayton, you said that Philly selected Jeff Carter, which that's simple enough. I put them down for Joe Pavelski. I feel like Pavelski's probably has a bigger upside than, or I know he does. I feel like, certainly Joe Pavelski has a bigger upside than Jeff Carter does.
Mm-hmm.
He's played less games, but scored 19 less points in, let's see here, do the quick math, probably well over 80 games. So I would say that Pavelski's on a better pace. I think he's a better hockey player than Jeff Carter, better fit for the Flyers. But obviously your explanation is very simple with select Carter, they selected Carter. Perfect. Moving over to the New York Rangers now at pick number 12. Hugh Jesseman.
Bust.
Right winger. If I get the statistics up here, let me just hit this button real fast.
He played in 2 NHL games and had 1 fight.
Thank you. 5 minutes, a -1 in his career, a big goose egg. I mean, this first round, mind you, produced some good ones.
That was the worst one.
I mean, Sean Bell, which we'll talk about in a bit at 30, he played in 20 games and had an assist. I mean, Hugh Jesseman is the only guy in the first round to never score a point in the National Hockey League. I mean, even Marc-Andre Fleury has more points than him.
Yeah.
I selected Mike Richards. You selected Dustin Byfuglien. I'm interested to hear your reasoning, sir.
Well, Dustin Byfuglien, I think, is, I think that he plays a big game. He's offensively talented while he can throw around the body and, be physical. But besides that, I mean, I just think that based on his offensive production and what he means to a team, that's why I put him above some of the other guys that I'm going to have coming up, just because that he's just so offensively talented while being so big. He's a fun guy to watch, and honestly, if the Jets trade him, which I think they're going to try and trade him, I mean, I think they're crazy, but it's because he's going to have such a high cap hit. But, with Dustin Byfuglien, I think that he definitely is probably one of the better, again, he's probably one of the better defensemen. He can play forward, which he has in his career, and I think that it makes him a valuable asset.
Whenever you can play both ways, it's certainly a fantastic asset, as we've seen with Brent Burns, like you said, Dustin Byfuglien. I don't think he's long for Winnipeg. That's a different conversation for a different time, but he's not there for much longer. Mike Richards was a very fantastic hockey player. We saw when he played with Los Angeles, when he played in Philadelphia. Obviously, the accusation and charges, the drug charges that he's facing or in the process of facing, have kind of stopped or put his probably should try to talk normal here. They've brought his career to a screeching halt. I mean, at this point, he was at the back end of his career. As we saw, his skating kind of lacked, his scoring output kind of lacked, but someone would take a shot on him at some point in time. I do believe, but I mean, if the Rangers picked Mike Richards here, if they picked anybody, they would have been better off. But I feel like if Mike Richards was available for them at this pick, they should have taken him. Now,
New York Rangers, big time swing and a miss.
Oh yeah. Moving over to the Los Angeles Kings, they picked right winger Dustin Brown. Brayton, you and I both selected Ryan Kessler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we did. And
I
think that
picked Kessler. I picked Kessler based off of, I mean, his game has started to drag off a little as his career has tailed on. But in 769 games, he has 452 points. He's a pretty damn good hockey player.
Oh, yeah. And his two-way game is phenomenal. I think that he's relied on in both ends of the ice to win faceoffs. I mean, we saw it recently when he was playing against the Sabres with taking on Jack Eichel. I mean, you look at a guy like Kessler and Jack Eichel. Kessler brings a gritty side to his game, and he's tough on faceoffs. And Jack Eichel, he was up to the challenge. I think that Eichel fared very well against a guy like Kessler. And, Kessler's been relied on in the power play and the penalty kill in his time with Anaheim and Vancouver. Kessler's, I mean, yeah, you're right. He has tailed off as of late, but I think that Ryan Kessler's still got quite a few years left in his career.
You mean Ryan Kessler? Ryan Kessler.
Kessler.
Yeah, when the Sabres and Ducks played, that's all RJ said was Ryan Kessler.
Oh boy.
I'm like, who's Kessler? Like a Twizzler or a Guzzler? Is he of those? Is he of those families?
Who knows? I was at the game, so I couldn't listen to what RJ was saying.
Oh, you're going robot on me.
Uh-oh.
You're back now. Blackhawks,
All right.
14th pick, Brent Seabrook. I picked Dion Phaneuf, pretty much best defender available. And if Phaneuf is available at that pick for the Blackhawks, they make that pick 7 days a week and twice on, or 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 8 days a week, twice on Sunday, whatever the saying is. They would pick Dion Phaneuf. Brayton, you have Thomas Vanek in this pick.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I went with Thomas Vanek because I think that when we saw him in Buffalo, of course, I mean, he's got some exceptional skill. He, has got a really nice slap shot. He's very patient with the puck. He doesn't panic with the puck at all. Again, just his inconsistencies have plagued him throughout his entire career. But besides that, I think that Thomas Vanek is a viable pick here. He's probably the next best offensive player available. 309 goals in 776 games, 632 points. Yeah, so Thomas Vanek is a pretty good player.
I would have to agree. I mean, I know we joke about how lazy he is all the time, but he's one of the best Sabres we're going to see in our lifetime.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
Moving on to the New York Islanders at pick 15. Robert Nilsson was the selection. I picked Corey Crawford, best player available. They could really use a goaltender, and Corey Crawford has shown, I mean, at least in the Blackhawks system, that he can be he is a very talented goaltender and can carry a team. So that's pretty simple for me. Just Crawford would be the guy. And then you selected Eric Stahl.
Yeah, I selected Eric Stahl. I know that he's put up a ton of points. I mean, he's got the most points among, all the players that have been selected in the draft in 880 games too. That's, nearly 150 more than Ryan Getzlaf, who's the next highest. Or excuse me, it was, if I'm doing my math here correctly, 55 games more than Dustin Brown, who's played 835. But he's put up the most points of any player that has played. The only thing that I would say, if I had him higher, the only way I had him higher is if he could stay healthy. That's my issue with Eric Stahl, is that he's as of late been very, very much under the scope. He's been hurt. He hasn't been able to stay healthy really over the past 3 years, and it's really plagued his career. But nonetheless, I think Eric Stahl is still a great player. It's just, he wasn't able to stay healthy for most of the time, and I think that's what hurt him most.
I agree. That's a very fair assessment. I mean, the thing about Stahl, like you said, the knock has been the injuries. I mean, he's been a fantastic hockey player. I don't know if he would have fallen this far, but it's certainly not a bad landing spot for him.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking back at his career stats. I mean, he put up some really good numbers in the year they won the Stanley Cup, 100 points, and he's played 6 seasons of his career, full 82 games. He's played 2 other seasons with 81. He had 70 in 09-10. But then since then, I mean, he played the full lockout season, and then since then, 79, 77, and 34, which isn't all that bad. But, I mean, he's been another one of those players where he's banged up and he goes on a big streak, then he'll be completely absent for 3 or 4 straight games, and it's almost like a Thomas Vanek kind of thing. But I don't think it was necessarily just because he's lazy. It's just because he's just so hurt, but he plays through it. So, I mean, yeah, I could probably look back and say, I could probably put Eric Stahl higher up. But, I mean, just right now with the way he's been over the past few years, it's just he's tailing off much faster, in my opinion, than, some of the other players that are still in this draft.
And it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with Eric Stahl in the future. Just kind of going
Absolutely.
off course for a second with his contract being up after this year. There's lots of talks that they're going to trade. The Hurricanes are going to trade him to where? Who knows yet?
What he needs. It's maybe what he needs. Maybe he needs a change of scenery. I mean, he's been the captain in Carolina for what now? Like 3 years, 4 years, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something of that nature. And maybe a new change of place will bring up the ante in his game, and maybe he'll go back to being the offensive producer that he was years ago. Don't get me wrong. I think that he's still a very good hockey player. It's just, I mean, he's just, he's got to stay healthy, and that's a problem for him right now.
Moving over to the San Jose Sharks, speaking of guys being healthy, Steve Bernier was the pick in 2003. We both selected Nathan Horton, whose promising NHL career has come to a screeching halt because of a back injury, which looks like it's going to end his career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, his career is over. It's just he has not obviously retired, because if he retires, he doesn't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Horton would have been a great pick for them there, even if he only did end up playing. We got the number here. I just had it and I lost it.
I gotcha. Hold on.
How about being prepared here?
Nathan Horton, 626 games, 421 points.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, he was a fantastic hockey player. I mean, the last time we saw him in Boston, he was doing very well.
Absolutely.
And then just got injured again, and that's what did it. That's what it took him out of the game. Come to find out, he has a degenerative back issue. I mean, now he's a Toronto Maple Leaf, for those that don't remember. And the David Clarkson deal was David Clarkson went to Columbus, and Horton comes up to Toronto.
Yeah,
for salary cap relief, but
yeah, I mean,
it really sucks to see injuries derail such a promising career.
Yeah, and Nathan Horton was one of those exciting players when he was playing with Boston. I mean, I remember the one game. I think he scored the game winner in Game 7 against Montreal the one year, in overtime. Just a nice slap shot from, sort of not necessarily the point, but I mean, halfway between the point and the faceoff circle. And I mean, it was just one of those things where he scored the goal, and he just, it was just one of those really, really clutch goals that he scored. And again, as you said, it's very, very, disappointing to see a young player like him be derailed by these type of injuries. And, honestly, if he was still playing, I'd probably have him higher up in the draft right now.
Absolutely. Moving on to the New Jersey Devils now. Zach Parise, how the hell you say it? I'm struggling tonight, guys.
Parise.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I just can't pronounce anything or enunciate very well.
You want me to pronounce all the names from here?
just hired. Yeah, you're hired.
All right.
Zach Parise, left winger, was the original pick in 2003 for the Devils at 17. I picked Louis Eriksson, who just simply, you need someone to replace Parise. I did it again. You need someone to replace Parise at 17. Eriksson has 469 points in 676 games. Struggled a little with injury and concussions and in post-concussion syndrome. But when he's on, he's on. And he's one of the best talents in this draft. The Devils would have been very happy with Louis Eriksson if they had got him. But as for you, Brayton, you have Dion Phaneuf falling to New Jersey at 17.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next best player available in the draft, in my opinion. 783 career games, 418 points, 1,087 penalty minutes. I'm having problems speaking like you are, but he's the next best player available. He's a solid defenseman. He has a little bit of an offensive style to his game, but he's more of a defensive, gritty style of player. But still, I mean, Dion Phaneuf, he's been able to stay healthy. He's been able to, overcome a lot, especially when in his career in Toronto, where he's faced a lot of criticism. But still, he's definitely one of the better players in the NHL. He's still probably one of the better defensemen too.
Now going back to the list here, just waiting for it to my phone is stopped cooperating. So there we are. We're back. The 18th pick, the Washington Capitals originally selected Eric Fair. We both selected David Backes, which would be a fantastic. He seems like the type of player that would play Capitals hockey.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm surprised that David Backes was, he fell to the second round of the Blues. I mean, granted, the scouting probably back then was a little bit different, and he was playing in the United States Hockey League, which back then wasn't as prolific as it is now because, I mean, more and more you're seeing players from the USHL getting selected higher up in the draft. But at that time, he was probably one of the higher ones. I'm looking through the list here of players being drafted from the USHL, and he was definitely one of the higher up ones. He might have been the highest ranked USHL player, honestly. But still, I mean, for him to fall to St. Louis in the second round was just incredible. And the way that he's performed in his career, I mean, he's probably going to get moved, or he's probably going to leave St. Louis at the end of the year and probably try and get a new contract. But, he's a prolific player. He's a very good player. And the Blues, kind of struck gold with their selection there.
Moving on to 19 now, Ryan Getzlaf was the pick, which looking back on that, one hell of a pick that was. I selected Milan Mikhailiuk at 19. I mean, it's not a bad pick. He scores, he gets points. Puts points on the board, all that fun stuff. 436 points in 721 career games, so he's no slouch. You selected Corey Crawford.
Yes. Yeah. I think Corey Crawford, after Marc-Andre Fleury, has become the best goalie available. And it was a toss-up for me between the guy that I have next going. We'll get to that in a second. But Corey Crawford, second rounder, 52nd overall, has just played very well. I mean, it took him a while to get the starting job in Chicago. I mean, he had to beat out guys like Antti Niemi and Nikolai Khabibulin, but finally he's got the job, and he's already won 2-3 Stanley Cups with the team. And this year he's having a Vezina Trophy candidate year. He's got 5 shutouts. He's been very, very good for Chicago over the past, probably 10 games. I think going into Saturday's game against Buffalo, he had something like a .67 goals against average and a .978 save percentage, which is just unbelievable over an 8-game stretch.
I mean, he's been fantastic. It's a good find for the Chicago Blackhawks, but I mean, if the redraft did happen, there's no doubt. I think he might go higher than this. I know we both picked him to go in about the same area, but who knows? I mean, with the way goaltending is in the National Hockey League today, maybe Corey Crawford goes higher. I would have to think so.
I mean, I understand why you put him as high as you did, but I just think there were better offensive talent and better guys to put ahead of him. But I mean, if he continues to play like this, his stock's going to continue to rise. And if we did a redraft maybe 3 or 4 years from now, if he continues to play this well, I'd probably have Corey Crawford higher than he is.
And that seems fair to me. Moving on to Minnesota now at 20, Brent Burns was the selection. I selected Brent Burns, which looking back on it, I'm surprised I didn't have him going sooner, but that one's pretty self-explanatory. You had Yaroslav Halak going at 20 to the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, one of those weird 9th round picks in the draft, because there's no more nine rounds anymore in the draft. They only go to 7, but he fell to Montreal in the 9th round. He was just one of those guys that kind of just developed, came out of the blue, and then what was it, 2010, I think it was, he really broke out when he was trying to get the Canadiens to the Stanley Cup Finals. They lost in that series to the Flyers, but Halak came up, he played very well, and then he went to the Blues, had some struggles there. Then he got traded to Buffalo, dressed in one game, didn't play. Went to Washington, didn't help them out, but he's sort of had a resurgence in his career in New York, and I think it suited him very well for the Islanders. I mean, the Islanders have a good defensive core in front of him. They've got a strong offense in front of him, and the Islanders, they needed a goalie, and they got their goalie now, and I think Yaroslav Halak has had a resurgence in his career, and I think that's why I put him so high, is just because he's playing pretty well as of late, and he's just been one of those underrated goalies the entire time throughout his entire career, and I think that did I want to keep Yarrow Halak when he came to Buffalo? Not necessarily, but he's definitely turned around his career, and I think he's playing very well lately.
I have no arguments with that pick. I mean, the goaltenders, the thing about the goaltenders is, like I said, it's very hard to select a goaltender because we've seen so many teams pick goaltenders and so many teams struggle with the selection of goaltenders where other teams pick a guy randomly and it works out for them. So redrafts are usually the place where you'll see the goaltenders get picked higher because, again, like I said, people don't usually use high picks on goaltenders unless they're a sure thing. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, I like I said, I picked Brent Burns, but I could see a guy like Halak going to Minnesota, and it probably would help them out a lot. Moving on to 21 now, Mark Stewart was the pick originally. I put Dustin Byfuglien in there just because this is one of the ones where I went with the pick of, okay, they picked a defenseman. Who's the best defenseman available? And Dustin Byfuglien is the guy on my board. He fits the style of play the Boston Bruins like to play. I feel like he'd fit in the mold of that city pretty well. And who knows? Maybe it's a spot he actually does end up going to after Winnipeg, and when his contract is up, who knows? But moving on to your pick, Brayton, you actually have a current Bruin, Louis Eriksson, being selected by the Bruins in 2003.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that was I believe it was a second rounder. Just looking back here, yes, he went to Dallas in the second round at 33 overall. He's had a good offensive career. He's put up some decent stats in his time in the NHL. Just looking at the stats here, he's got 195 goals and 469 points in 676 games, which is not that bad. And I mean, he had a better career when he was in Dallas, and when been in Boston, he's sort of struggled. But I mean, he's got a lot of pressure put on him for being the main trade piece in the Tyler Seguin deal, which has completely not worked out for Boston and has been a jackpot trade for the Dallas Stars. Because
as you were saying, because you cut out on my end, the Tyler Seguin trade, yes,
yeah, just crazy.
The oops trade.
Oh yeah,
Tyler Seguin, currently one of the best players in the National Hockey League.
Just got to go off note here. I just looked on my tweet deck and got a tweet here saying that Sweden's Sebastian Aho will miss the World Junior Championships with a shot because he fractured his larynx on a shot from Joe Hicketts from Canada.
Ow.
Yeah.
Ow.
Fractured larynx. That's got to hurt.
That's painful. Oh, my God. That's horrible.
Yeah, ow is right.
Oh, man. Hey, so I just noticed the next pick, Edmonton Oilers. They selected Marc-Antoine Pouliot.
You got it right.
We both selected Dustin Brown. I have him as a center. You have him as a right winger. Either way, Dustin Brown to the Edmonton Oilers at 22. He's gritty. He's a leader. I'm not sure how much of a leader, but enough of a leader that I would put him in Edmonton because why not? I don't think we have to spend too much time on that one. You know, we all know Dustin Brown at this point very well because how successful the Kings have been. A Western New York native, so it makes it a little more exciting, I guess. But, I think Dustin Brown would have been –
Ithaca's more of like Central New York, isn't it?
It can still be counted Western New York. I'll take it. I'm taking it. I'm taking it. They can't have it. We're going to have it.
Well, I guess that Zach Bogosian's technically a Western New Yorkian, except I think he was more in upstate New York and Messina.
Yeah, he's an upstate New Yorker. Yeah, so I mean, I guess
but like we still want to think that he's a Western New Yorker, which okay, whatever. But I mean, no, Messina's all the way up near freaking Canada.
With Vancouver, Kessler was the pick. Ryan Kessler was the pick. I put Jimmy Howard there. You put Mike Richards there. I think with how Ryan Miller's been playing lately, I mean, when he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he's horrible. Having a Jimmy Howard in Vancouver probably would have assisted the transition from Roberto Luongo a little better because we're still really not sure how good of a goaltender Eddie Lack is going to be, where we already know how good of a goaltender Jimmy Howard is. I mean, obviously, because he's a Red Wing and he still played kind of with them in their glory. We won't know until a little bit down the road once they start to transition away from Datsuk and Zetterberg. But Jimmy Howard has been good enough to be my pick at 23.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it, touched base with it with when you put Mike Richards up earlier in the draft with his drug issues and everything. But I mean, Mike Richards, when he was with Philadelphia. He was the leader. He was the captain. He was one of those guys that was so highly looked after. And he had some great offensive ability. He was a good two-way forward, and he was heavily relied on. And I mean, I wish that, everything that happened with Mike Richards didn't happen, but, life outside of hockey is completely different. And,
absolutely.
It's just a shame that kind of stuff has happened with Mike Richards. But, I think that still, he's a good player, and hopefully we'll see him in the NHL one day. And who knows? We'll see.
Speaking of Mike Richards, the 24th pick in 2003 was Mike Richards. I have Brent Seabrook just because I know how bad the Flyers want and need defense. And Brent Seabrook is pretty damn good. You talked about him before, Brayton, working with Duncan Keith, being a fantastic hockey player, fantastic hockey defenseman. I think if the Flyers ended up with Seabrook, they'd be very happy. And then you picked Milan Michalek to go to Michalek. I quit. Michalek. I don't know why. I'm bad at this shit stuff.
Yeah, no, it's one of those Czech Republic names that are difficult. But
I don't hockey very much apparently.
Michalek has been one of those guys that he's offensively gifted. He's a big body. Doesn't necessarily use his big body a lot, but he's still a very good offensive talent. It's just he's got problems staying healthy as well. He had concussion issues in San Jose. He's had more concussion issues in Ottawa. And he's just had other injuries that have plagued him in his time in the NHL. Looking at his stats right now, Milan Michalek right here, 721 games, which is actually quite a bit of games for Michalek, and 436 points in that span. It's just, he can't stay healthy, and he's one of those guys that he may go on a hot streak, and then you don't see anything from him for quite a few games. But still, he's a first-round value player, and just, I think that he's worthy of it.
I don't think he's worthy of the pick where he was originally picked, but,
No, absolutely not.
We'll lose a lot of sleep arguing over players who are picked too high or too low. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of players picked too low, moving on to Florida now, Anthony Stewart was the original pick. I put Clark MacArthur in that spot. 74th overall originally to the Buffalo Sabres. 304 points in 548 games. I'll tell you what, with the old Buffalo Sabres regime, Darcy Regier and friends, things may not have turned out so well, but there's one thing they were good at, and that was finding late round talent. And Clark MacArthur is no different. Like I said, he's 133 goals in his NHL career up to today, the 23rd of December. Would have been a fantastic pick for Florida, who really could use the extra firepower. If you had told me 2003, they could have left with Patrice Bergeron and Clark MacArthur on my board, that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, got a little, let's see. Yeah, because, when he was with Buffalo, he put up some decent numbers, but I don't think he got the playing time he wanted in Buffalo. He was sent back and forth constantly to Buffalo and Rochester. And he was traded to Atlanta at the trade deadline in 2009. And since then, he's, kind of taken off from there. But, with MacArthur, I don't blame you for the reasoning with the pick. I went with Tobias Enstrom. I think that Enstrom is a very, very good puck-moving defenseman. He's a little underrated with his offensive skill, I think. And, I think that Winnipeg and Atlanta at the time when they selected him way, 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 way back in the 8th round that year, they got a really nice, solid Swedish defenseman, and he's played very well for them.
And as we've seen the Florida Panthers today, again, because we keep bringing it back to today, they probably could use more defensemen. Even though they've been a good hockey team this year, it probably would have sped up the rebuild process if they actually had a halfway decent defenseman,
right,
to match with the rest of the talent on that team. Moving over to the Kings now, they selected Brian Boyle, which in its own right is not a bad pick, as we've seen. Brian Boyle's carved out a decent NHL career, but I have Matt Molson going to the Kings at 26. We've seen it firsthand, front and center, 328 points in 508 games. He struggled a bit this season, but it's hard. It's hard to deny the fact that the Penguins got good value. The Penguins didn't get good value. They found good value in Matt Moulson at 263 in that draft. Pick 263.
Yep, and I went with Eric Fair. He's put up some decent numbers in his time with Washington. Now he's playing with Pittsburgh. Good two-way forward. He can play center. He can play wing. I think that I put him here just because of his value with being a really good two-way player.
That seems fair. Moving over to the Los Angeles Kings now. Jeff Tambellini was the pick. Braden Coburn was both of our picks, Braden. Braden was the pick, Brayton.
Yeah. Coburn, he's one of those guys. How do I describe Braden Coburn? I mean, he's a big physical force. He hits a lot. He's tough to play against, but the thing about him is that he's just one of those guys, again, just kind of, when is he going to show up? When can he stay healthy? But I mean, Tampa Bay traded a first-round pick and Radko Gudas to acquire Braden Coburn, which I thought was a little much. But, I mean, Coburn brings a gritty style of game to him, or brings a gritty style to his game. And, I think that's why I put him here, is just because, he's doesn't have he's not really that great with the offensive numbers. I mean, he's not bad. It's just, let's see, where was he originally selected? He was originally selected 8th by Atlanta. I mean, 174 points in 653 games. So yeah, not too many points in that time, but I mean, still a physical force to play against, and I think that's why I still have him in the first round.
And that seems very fair. I don't think he should have went as high as he went, as we always say, hindsight being 2020. But
Right.
If it's 27th overall with the Kings, they get a good player, good value. I mean, it's hard to argue that one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving over to the Anaheim Ducks, who stole Corey Perry at 28 overall. Whoever made that pick, whoever found Corey Perry at 28 gets a gold star.
Tim Murray.
Oh, there you go. Isn't that crazy how that works out?
They traded to get him there too, because Tim Murray knows what he's doing. Listen to that, people. Tim Murray knows what he's doing.
As you can tell by the time in Buffalo so far, Tim Murray does know what he's doing, and Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf are two of the prime examples. But I put Lee Stempniak in that role at 28. He has 395 career points in 743 games. Just trying to fill the role that would have been missed by Corey Perry. And obviously, Stempniak picked 148 overall by the Blues in 2003. It wouldn't have been nowhere near Corey Perry's numbers, but still not a bad depth guy on your franchise in terms of building long term.
Yeah, and I went with Brian Boyle. I think Brian Boyle's a good third, fourth line center. You can rely on him to be a good defensive centerman. Put him on the penalty kill. He's got a toughness to his game, but he's got a very underrated skill set to his game. I think that who's he playing for right now? Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay has got a very good fourth line center. That's why I think that they're so stacked with their with all four lines. They've got very good center depth there, and I think that he's very valuable with where he was taken. And I mean, that's why I think that he got the nice contract from Tampa Bay when he became a free agent, or was he traded? I can't remember what happened, but yeah, Brian Boyle.
That's fair. Everything you say makes sense to me, sir. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He signed a 3-year deal with Tampa Bay last year.
Pick 29. We're getting close to wrapping up here. Patrick Eaves was the original pick. I have Steve Bernier, ex-Buffalo Sabres Steve Bernier, going to the Ottawa Senators, which at that pick,
2 goals in his first and then did nothing.
Yeah, I remember the days he was a slug saber.
Yeah.
624 points, or 624 games, 227 points, 105 goals, 122 assists. The numbers don't really jump off the page, but he has been a decent enough NHL hockey player to warrant being picked at 29 overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I have Matt Moulson, current Buffalo Sabre left winger and former Kings left winger, former Islanders left winger. You know, I like Molson. I like his game. I mean, he's got. I mean, I could go on with how, you know, he's being. I don't know what the word is here in Buffalo, but I mean, when he was with the Islanders, that was probably his best time when he was playing alongside John Tavares, because Tavares would feed him the puck and he would just, you know, he'd be there, put the puck in the net. And Molson's just trying to find somebody to play with right now on the Sabres. I mean, he was on the fourth line against Chicago, but the thing is that he's the player that you park him in front of the net, you get a shot on, he's going to gobble up the loose change and put in rebounds. And I mean, that's what he needs to do for Buffalo. And I think he's just trying to do too much with Buffalo right now. He just needs to get to the net, stay in front, put the puck in the net on the loose rebounds in front, and be a force in front. But overall, Matt Molson's been a very good player for the in his time in the NHL. I mean, he's put up 158 goals, 328 points in 508 games played.
Now, if they had selected Matt Molson at 29, that's a damn good value for sure. I know I was going to say, I mentioned on THW Live, the Hockey Writers Live with our friend of the podcast, Mike Straw, that Molson, I think the problem with Molson is the same thing you said, and the same thing a lot of people are saying. You know, he's not playing his style of hockey, which is stand in front of the net and get the garbage, get the loose change, put it home. He's not doing that. And that's his bread and butter. And if he's not doing that, he's not going to score. He's not going to be a part of the play. So it might take a little more time for him to figure it out, but I don't know how much more of a leash he's going to have. I know he's got a big deal here in Buffalo, but if he struggles this year, could it be the end? Or, you know, do they give Matt Molson a second shot? That's something we'll find out in the next 60-some games. A lot of the season left to be played. Matt Molson can certainly turn it around. I mean, the season isn't completely in the tank yet for him, but, you know, it's certainly trending that way for Matt Molson, but still a damn good hockey player for a guy, like we said, who was selected in the 200s. So that would have been that was a great find when he was picked.
Second pick in the 9th round.
Yeah, he was a great find when he was picked, and would have been even better if he was picked in the first round by the Ottawa Senators, according to Brayton. Now, moving over to the final pick of the first round and the final pick of this 2003 NHL redraft, Sean Bell was the original pick, 30th overall of the St. Louis Blues. I selected goaltender Brian Elliott, someone who has played in St. Louis. He's been a fantastic talent his entire career. Very valuable to the teams he has played for. And maybe if he was in St. Louis his entire career, maybe his career numbers are a little better. He's a little more successful, and maybe he's a Stanley Cup champion.
And I have Patrick Eaves. He's had some injury problems over his career. However, as of late, especially with Dallas, his game's rebounded. He's, you know, playing on the second line with like Jason Spezza and Patrick Sharp right now. And he's finding ways to produce on offense and put the puck in the net. And he's playing very well. And I think that over the course of his career, he's been a very underrated offensive talent. It's just he can't stay healthy. I mean, he's had 176 points in 510 games. However, I think that he's a very disciplined player, as he's only had 163 penalty minutes in his career. But, you know, for a guy that, you know, has been plagued by injuries, I think that he's been very underrated in his offensive game. And, you know, I think that that's a perfect way to close out the first round of this redraft.
Now, next time we do a redraft, we may do this differently. This is a new thing. We're trying it out. We're trying to make it more interactive for everybody. So, you know, if it's not too exciting, apologize. Let us know what you think over at bltdsports.com, at Twitter at BLTD Sports, Facebook.com/BLTD Podcast. You can hit Brayton up at BJ Wilson WGR. I am at Wolf BLTD on Twitter. This was a lot of fun, I think.
I think so too. I can't wait to do the next one because I think I'm all ready to go for that one, but we'll wait. And I'm pretty sure I'll probably change it up again, as I changed up this redraft literally 5 minutes before we went on. It's just like, oh, well, I'm going to change it up just a little bit.
There's nothing wrong with that, man. Like I said, I did my original draft, and then I looked back at at someone else's redraft to kind of get an idea of how I should do this. And then next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I should probably redo like the whole first half of my draft. So
yeah. Yeah, and I get where you were going with your redraft, where it's just like what would be the team needs like now and then compared to, back then. And I kind of just went with, who are the top ranked players that are in the league right now, who has the biggest impact with their team that they're currently playing for. And I just kind of went that way. And I mean, I took their points into account and, the way they've played and, if they've been injury plagued. But I mean, it's difficult. It really is a tough task of figuring out where to slot guys, because I mean, especially when you get down to the lower picks, it's like, okay, well, there's definitely guys that are worthy of a pick, and then there's guys that are kind of just a crapshoot. It's like, do I take this guy or do I take this guy? It's tough, but I'm glad we did this. It's a very good experience, and I can't wait to do the next one.
Sounds good, man. Everybody, thank you for listening. This has been the BLTD Extracast number 8. The 2003 NHL redraft. We'll see you sometime soon with a new BLTD podcast. I actually think once this is done, I have to go to another location and record that one. So busy here at Better Live Than Dead Sports, BLTDsports.com. Thanks again for tuning in, guys and gals and friends and coworkers. I don't know where I'm going with that one. I'm trailing off here. I'm kind of tired, actually. I'm not sure if you could tell. You probably could tell throughout the podcast that I'm just very tired today. It kind of just hit me. I'm not sure why, but that's life. We still got a podcast, though. We still got a podcast.
Gotta get in those 5-hour energies there.
Dude, I need more than a 5-hour energy. I need like an electrical shock to my body or something at this point.
That's what you need, chocolate.
I need a Menergy. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right? The power thirst?
Yes. You like strawberry? Well, how about rawberry?
When life gives you lemons, you find a new god. With that being said, with that being said, for Brayton, at BJ Wilson on Twitter, I am Ryan Wolf, at WolfBLTD on Twitter. Thanks again for tuning in. We will talk to you sometime very soon.